I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be, I manipulated her into marrying me? Well, I've got an email here from a viewer whose wife actually said that to him in a moment when they obviously weren't getting along very well. So I've got a quote before I get into this email here that I'd like to share with you. And it's about recovering and getting past loss, or when things don't work out, whether it's a relationship or you lose your job or just life, you get downsized, life circumstances just tend to happen. You think you're going in one direction, all of a sudden something drastic changes, and then all of a sudden before you know it, you're having to move into another direction, find a new job, find a new girlfriend, hire a divorce attorney, close down your business. Just life circumstances sometimes can be very disconcerting and tough to deal with. And your ability to adapt to change will greatly determine how quickly you come out of your challenges in life. And so the quote says, "Life's disappointments, setbacks, and struggles are there to teach you patience and lessons essential to your success in the future. You won't see the dots connecting to your future success until you're able to look back upon the path you took to succeed once you achieve your goals. Trust that everything good and bad is happening in your life in order to shape you into the person you need to become to fulfill your destiny and reach your full potential." It goes back to when things happen in your life, instead of getting upset about it, or seeing things worse as they are or better than they actually are, the idea is you want to see things as they are. And so when something happens and it's totally out of your control, the only thing you really have is the meaning that you give it, as well as your associations. And so it's always good to remember that when you're in a difficult situation, your back is up against the wall in anything in life, to always remember to ask good quality questions, such as, what's good about this? What can I learn from this? How can this help me become a better person going forward? What is the lesson here that I need to learn, that I continually seem to keep coming back to this same kind of situation here? So you can get whatever the lesson is, pick up the piece of wisdom, and next time you're in that similar situation in the future, you'll do the right thing and take the appropriate action. So let's get into this guy's email here and take a look at what's going on with this situation. He says, "Hey Coach, I've been watching your YouTube channel religiously and reading your book trying to make sense of my wife's behavior. We've been together for 8 years and married for 5 of them. We have 2 children, a boy and a girl. They're 2 and 3. The basics of my story are like most in your channel, but here goes the deal. I'm 42 and she's 27. This did not seem to be a problem until now, I guess. She started going to clubs and bars and hanging out with friends and staying out till 4 a.m. This caused a lot of problems because I stayed home with the kids and she did not seem to care how it was affecting them and me." Well, I'm sure you've heard this saying, the family that plays together stays together. Well, your wife is basically going out with other people outside of your family and playing with them because for whatever reason, in her eyes, there's more fun to be had outside of her family than with it. And that is indicative of a woman who has a low level of attraction for her husband. So it's not something that happened overnight. It's something that gradually became that way. And when I talk to guys and coach guys that are in these problems with long-term relationships, the biggest thing that the guy does is that once they get into the relationship, they've been married for a few years, they got kids, whatever it happens to be, they stop doing the things that made them successful. They stop courting and dating their wife or their girlfriend. The courtship never ends. And women know that when a guy is not doing all those little things that he used to do when he was courting her in the beginning, because women want to be in a love story, and if the love story ends, then eventually they're going to start looking for that emotional bond and connection with somebody else. And so your marriage went from one of where the two of you were focused as a family, raising 2 children, to one where it's like I said, women basically vote with their feet. And so you look at their actions and you see where they go and you see what they do. And obviously, if they're hanging out with people other than you and you're in a relationship with them, or you have a family with this person, obviously it means they ain't voting for you. And so something needs to change. So he says, this is not seen to be, let's see. So he says, I found out that she had been calling and texting a so-called friend. It had been all downhill from there. Long story short, I got past it somehow. At least you thought you got past it. And we decided to move forward. About 2 months later, she came home and told me that a friend at her job told her that she could get paid a lot more money if she moved to the middle of the country. We discussed it a lot, and I was on board, and I was in my last semester of college and had only 2 months to graduate. So I gathered up my question is what about, I mean, you're going to college, it's like, what about your purpose? What about your dreams? What about your goals? What about what you want to do with your life? Was there ever any of that discussion? Or was the whatever you went to school for, is that the kind of thing that you can pretty much work anywhere? Maybe that's a possibility. But that's important because the guy needs to be the leader in the relationship. And it's great that your girl is moving across the country for a job opportunity, but is she moving there for the job opportunity, or is she moving there to get away from you? That's something you obviously got to look at. I mean, it's important because if there's no discussion, it's like, hey, I think I should move out there, and you're like, okay, great, but like I said, I didn't see anything in here where you're mentioning what it is that you wanted, because obviously you spent all this time going to school, and like I said, but unless, of course, there's a job out there. That's just something that is, that I noticed is reading through here. So he says, so I gathered up my family, I moved them 900 miles away, and I had a very hard time being without my family, and it drove me insane. I would call, and she wouldn't pick up like she used to, and started to not Skype with me anymore. So that tells me that the power is shifting. Now she's away from you, and you're doing all of the pursuing and the calling and the texting, and all that's going to do, in essence, you're acting like the woman now in this particular case, and your wife has assumed the man's role. She's decided there's another job opportunity that's better for her, so she's moving the family across the country with or without you, and obviously it looks like at this point it's without you. So he says, I couldn't see my kids or anything, just like a basic cutoff. She said she needed space, but would come to my graduation. She came back to town and basically argued and surrounded herself with her friends and said she was scared for her life that I would harm her because she left me. I backed off. Well, obviously there's something here that you're not telling me. So he says, I backed off, and then she called 3 to 4 times a day. We then had sex, and I thought it would be okay. I helped her pack up the rest of her belongings and took them to the post office. I then drove her to the airport and kissed my kids goodbye, crying as I left the airport. She then calls and asks me if I will send for her when I get myself together. Up and down mind games. I continued to back off until tonight. I called for her while she was out at the bar, and she gave me a blow that I couldn't recover from. She said that I had manipulated her into marrying me and that she is confused. So in other words, what's going on here is that at some point you stopped romancing and courting your girl properly. Because obviously you got her to the point where she fell enough in love with you to want to get married and have kids, but over time, the friendship and the fun that you guys used to have together, because I mean, at the end of the day, all relationships start out as just a guy and a girl getting together who like each other physically, and they hang out, they have a good time together, and then usually the guy makes the move, and they start kissing and making out. That leads to heavy petting, and then later on, a successful conclusion in the bedroom. I mean, that's ultimately how it starts out, hanging out, having fun, and hooking up over and over and over, to the point where it starts out very slow in the beginning, and then it gets to the point where you have more fun with that person, and they have more fun with you than anybody else in their life. And so therefore you decide to have all that fun together, whether it's living together or being boyfriend, girlfriend, or getting married, starting a family. But at some point, whether it's the job or your career or being a parent, you let things get in the way and you figure, oh, hey, we're married, she's not going anywhere. And so you're no longer that fun guy, that fun, mysterious guy that she fell in love with. Now you're just like a roommate, the guy that helps her raise her kids, in essence. There's no romance going on. There's no real deep communication. It's like she doesn't feel like you really understand where she's coming from, what her needs or her wants are. A lot of times the woman will often complain about what it is the guy's not doing, and he'll just ignore it and brush it off and think, oh, I did this, I did that, I took her to bed and breakfast last week, and I took her out to dinner a couple weeks ago, and he rationalizes all those things, but she just keeps complaining about the same thing over and over again. And I mean, this is typically what I see as a coach. And eventually she gets to the point where she gets tired of it, and so she slowly drifts away. But it's like women fall in love slowly over time, but they also fall out of love slowly over time. And this is, you can see the patterns, you can see the intimacy, you see the friendship. It's dying. It's so the two people are moving apart, and most of the time, unfortunately, the guy is the last one to realize it. So he says, I don't know what to do besides move on. I've been with her for so long that I forgot how to be with anyone else. I really feel like I can't live without her, and I know that you hear that all the time, but I've never seen this coming. I was like, what did I just say? So he says, I just graduated college, and I feel that it isn't worth anything without my family. He says, I was a stay-at-home dad for 2 years without her help. Now she has my kids, and I have to get over her and the loss of my kids. I mean, man, that's a shitty situation, and I know it sucks. And if she's taking your kids and set up a route in another state, and if you want to see them, I don't know what the laws are legally for that. I mean, so maybe at this point, the only choice that you have, because you weren't earning an income at the time either when she did this. So, like I said, you'd have to get together with an attorney that's aware of the laws in your state. But, I mean, you might, if you want to be in your kid's life, the only choice you might have is to move to where she's at now, because all this stuff is taking place basically with your consent. And in reality was she was just really doing this as a way to kind of get away from you. And so at this point, your wife has stopped making an effort. I mean, she's just unilaterally changed the terms of your relationship. And the only thing you can really do in this case, I mean, if she's not returning your calls and she doesn't want to see you, I mean, there's not a whole hell of a lot that you can do, which is just leave a message for her and wait to hear back from her. And when you hear from her, make a date to hang out, have fun, and hook up. Or, if you're not in the same town, make a Skype date to talk and go through my book and learn the sections on communication. I did an article and a video a while back called How to Communicate with Women Effectively, and it is absolutely essential that you learn these skills, because if you don't learn these skills, you're not going to be able to open up your wife emotionally to where she can communicate with you and you can figure out what's really going wrong and what you need to do to take corrective action. But it's obvious at some point the two of you stopped having fun together. It's interesting, one of the things that you said here, how you basically raised the kids by yourself for the past 2 years because she wasn't around or she was partying or what have you. So that tells me, probably 2 years plus it's been since the romance kind of died out in your relationship. And eventually, women instinctively know it's the man's job to be the leader in the relationship. And when you don't take the leadership role, that's what you see. The woman becomes more independent. She moves out. She changes careers. She just becomes more independent-minded and starts focusing more on her career and doing things on her own as opposed to doing things together. So, I mean, that's pretty much all you can do. Wait to hear from her and then make a date to hang out and have fun and hook up and start romancing and courting her properly. But you got to learn those communication skills, because if you don't learn them, you're just not going to be able to save the relationship. So if you'd like to get my help personally with this situation, go to my website, click the products tab, and book a paid phone session. I'll talk to you soon.